Hey, let's talk about editing video. After I published my How to Create Content Faster and Lazier video, Bilal said some really nice things about the way I edit videos. Thank you so much. And asked if I could talk a little bit more about the editing process. So I just captured every step that I take inside of a timeline, and I was gonna do like an overview video of that. Okay, so let's jump into DaVinci Resolve. Something that's nice about DaVinci Resolve is that because it's multiple different programs, you have this option of really going from left to right, which I find to be a pretty nice way of thinking about an edit. So first and foremost, you have the media page where you're just going to connect to your drives and pull anything that you want to use into your project. Here, you'll see everything that I used in this project. We have audio files, some video files of websites in action, this little pre-compiled outro that I have, and obviously my screen. So the first edit step is in the cut page. And this is what a typical cut page looks like for me by the time that I bring it in from Recut. If you didn't watch that last video, Recut is a tool that you just throw a video file into. It's an application, and it will cut out all of the silent portions, making an edit significantly easier. But you can get a timeline back that looks a lot like this, where all the cuts are in place. And in this view, my goal is really just to make sure that we have a really nice A-roll cut. So usually I'm doing this based on the audio and not worrying too much about how that maps up to video. So you see there's pretty even spacing between all of these cuts. But if there wasn't, I can do a handful of things. I can move this, so that it can be further back on one side of the clip or further forward on the other side of the clip. And if I pull just on one side, I can shorten a clip altogether. Now, there are keyboard shortcuts for this, but the mouse actually works really nice. One of the few places where having a mouse may be more efficient. So at the end of the cut phase, I want to make sure that there are no duplicates of me saying anything and that the pacing of all of the audio feels pretty good, even if some of the video parts are a little bit not very tight, which brings us to the edit page. Now that we're done with the cut page, getting our A-roll ready, we can move on to the edit page. In the edit page, it becomes really easy to really drill into some of these specific moments. So right here, a lot of times you might have heard of an L cut or a J cut where the video or the audio comes in before the other to kind of keep a sense of motion and make things feel a little bit better. It's really hard to explain. So in this case, all of my cuts going into this are flat. Now, if I grab this handle in the middle right here and move it, it's going to move both tracks. But on the edit page, if I hold Option and pull on the video, I can make a little L cut to make the video cut happen before the audio cut. And this has a like super minor effect of smoothing over some of those edit points. Data endpoint security. Again, super minor, but it is a thing that I will do in the edit page. Looking through this edit, it seems to actually have been like a fairly tight record process. So I'll just kind of show you some of the other things that I will do. There's a tool that you can use to slip the video. So sometimes at these points, the video won't match in a pretty catastrophic way. And so you can actually slip the video if you want and just move the contents of the video while keeping the edit points. And again, if you hold Option, you can slip just the video and you can see how these are, there's a difference now between the audio and the video. Again, very helpful when you want to do a little bit of tailoring to make sure that these clips transition really nicely. So that's the first phase of the edit page for me. I just want to make sure that any video portions are eased together to fit the audio very nicely. But there's a second phase where I'll add zooms and B-roll, etc., transitions, whatever. So let's go back to DaVinci Resolve and open up this B-roll cut where you'll see significantly more going on. At the very beginning, you can see that we pulled in just the video for the AuthKit homepage in this case, and we transition it out into me speaking, just using a stock bright flash transition. I think that's the only time I've ever used a bright flash, to be honest. Now, this is doing some cool stuff here. There's a cool zoomy zoom, and I'll show you the plugin that I use for that. In Effects, I have a library that I really love for this. I think it's just called MagiZoom. Yes, MagiZoom. There's a free version without some of this fancy stuff and a kind of more complete version with a lot of additional effects, including this one that kind of makes these 1, 2, 3 stops. Super cool. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, next most important thing is a lot of times I will add little zooms for a bit of like visual interests. So you can see we have a bunch of code happening in this corner here, and we just want to zoom in to showcase that that is happening. For that, I use an adjustment clip. You can find these in effects under adjustment clip. You just drag this, onto the timeline, and here you have all of the tools that you would otherwise on a video clip. Transform, crop. I can use effects, again, using this MagiZoom to zoom in. And we can apply them to this adjustment clip, which leaves the source clip unaffected. This is great for a handful of reasons. One, we're not destructively editing these or like putting edits in a place that's hard to find. See, like right now, I can see all the places that I have zooms or some type of edit. And then also I can copy and paste these by holding Option. If I drag this around, it will duplicate the adjustment clip, and I can use that same effect somewhere else. So definitely a time-saving type of thing right there. So you see there's a lot of adjustment clips, doing a lot of zoomy type things, and then, zooming out, which is, pretty common for my types of videos. Here we have our standard video, the adjustment clip on top of it, and then I have an additional B-roll that I just use a built-in kind of silly paper effect to overlay the docs, which is a nice little touch, I think. So that's kind of the second half of the edit page for me, adding those little visual effects that kind of zoom into the things that I want to focus on, and add B-roll where it's important to kind of showcase documentation or a video is interesting, etc. Now, I don't do a lot of work in the Fusion page. I'd like to do more of it, but so far it's something that just kind of adds confusion for me. So I skip that for now, but I do have some things that I do in the color page. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about color grading, and so I don't mess with it a ton. But if you Google Apple Gamma Shift problem, DaVinci Resolve, you'll notice that when you export things, sometimes they can be a little dingy looking. And so I would find a video on that to talk about how you get your project set up to recognize the Apple Gamma or whatever it is. But I can tell you kind of how I just manually color correct it. I can sync my local grades to remote grades, and then every time I make a change, it's going to change all of them. Again, laziness is the key here. So I just turn the gamma up a little bit. This kind of has the effect of making the shadow areas like darker. So I turn that to like minus 0.3 or 0.4, depending on how, saucy I'm feeling. And then I'll do the opposite with the lift. So I will then take those kind of like middle slight highlight areas and kind of pull them up. So it has this effect of like adding to the contrast, but with a little bit more control. And then however I need, I might adjust the gain. Again, I have to be careful though, because I'm using a white screen. I don't want to blow this out and then have to like fix all of the screens separate than the edit. I just want to fix that kind of like weird gamma export issue for Apple Video. That said, one thing that you want to be mindful of is not adding adjustments to your color adjustments to your adjustment clips, because that will have the effect of doubling the adjustment effect. So you could have like an extremely contrasty version if you just kind of wholesale select all of these and try to make an adjustment to those. Now, that's really about all I do in the color page, is just kind of compensating for some of that dinginess that you get from the DaVinci to Apple export. So that brings us finally to audio. Let's talk about that. This tab is actually called Fairlight. I don't know. I assume that they probably bought some product or merged products, and this was called Fairlight, I guess. Here, I will start by normalizing all of my audio. So I'll grab the beginning and the end of this. I'm sure there's an easy shortcut for this that I don't know. Right click and say normalize audio levels. Now I'll just put this to YouTube because that's going to be my final export. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to export it to normalized YouTube audio. The only thing that's important is that I set a consistent level so that I can match my sound effects to it, so that when it's normalized on export, it's not all mixed up. So you can normalize it to however you want and then just mix to those. But I just use the YouTube one because it's easier than remembering too. Lazy again. Okay, so typically here I'll have some just like low grade music playing in the background, user identities and authorization data, endpoint security is critical. Today we'll learn how to cryptic. And then there's oftentimes a transition point where I actually transition from the intro into the code. That'll have like a little whoosh sound effect typically, and I will start fading out that background music around that time. So it's kind of like this. Bring webhook endpoints. On screen, we have our convex http.ts file. HTTP. So yeah, and then I'll just kind of layer in my other effects. In a previous video, there's a little like in a previous video to showcase that animation. We created this corner, which you probably can't see because my face is there. Handler in previous video. And yeah, I just kind of stagger those throughout, and then at the end I do like kind of the similar thing in reverse. I have this, you know, little whoosh there, and then soundtrack fades in. Of sync events. And again, these have handles, so this will, you know, be your fade in, fade out, and control the slope of that with this little knobby here. Now you do have control over dynamics, so sometimes I'll enable this depending on how the room noise was, the track effects. There's like a voice isolation. I usually don't set it much higher than 50. It sounds very robotic otherwise. And I might add some dynamics here. I do like expander gate. It just knocks down some of those like low non-talking noises, which really helps in cuts. Sometimes you can do this too much and it'll just be like off and on. I hate that sound, but I find that this expander just with its default settings is pretty good. The compressor, I do like to turn on just a little bit. And for this, you just have to play the audio. You want to see it kind of like tickle this little light every once in a while with excited speech. Single event. You don't want too much or it's going to sound pretty canned. And that's kind of about it. Now, final thing on this page is if you do plan on providing transcripts, I usually search here for, what is it, subtitles, I think. And you just run create subtitles from audio. This is a great way. It will generate some subtitles for you. As you can see, I have on here. It's pretty quick on Mac hardware these days. Okay, so let's talk about the final stage of export. I talked about this a little bit in my lazy fast content video, but you know, it seems kind of unfinished if we don't go to that last page. So we go to the last page. We have our audio and our transcripts. Here we can see the transcripts enabled. We can edit those if we want. Actually, I forgot. We have to do that in, what is it? Which tab do we edit transcripts in? So this is part where it goes a little bit nonlinear. I think this is in the edit page. You have to go back to the edit page if you want to edit these transcripts. So it could be a little bit of a step back, but once you have it right, pretty easy. Most places I can upload with H.265, which I really like. I think it comes out a little bit better video-wise, smaller files. Pretty standard stuff, give it a name, whatever. I don't think too much about these except making sure that the dimensions are the dimensions that I want. There is an advanced panel here. So if we go to audio and we want to normalize for our YouTube export, that's what I typically go towards. And in video, if we go to not advanced, but subtitles, is it right there? We can specify that we want our subtitles exported as a separate file and indicate which type of file we would like that to be. And I usually do SRT without formatting. Otherwise, it's going to come in with a bunch of like bold tags by default, which I don't understand, but without formatting is the one that you want. And finally, you have to click on the track to include in your export. I think this comes out as like whatever you name it, underscore subtitles or something as a sidecar file. And then yeah, once you're done, that's pretty much it. You just kind of check it out, make sure that it looks nice and send it. Okay, so that's a quick look at my editing process. I hope that that was helpful. I hope that maybe there's some tips in there that you didn't know. The biggest thing for me as an audio guy is just really making sure that everything works on an audio level. Starting with your A-roll cut, making sure that like the pacing feels right there, and then just layering on from there, sound effects, B-roll, visual effects, and normalizing everything so it actually sounds like the right level and people aren't having to ride that volume knob as they're going around YouTube. I hope that helps. See you later. Bye.